Now that I'm department chair, I wanted to show you how I'm starting to use GIS to support some of the many responsibilities that I have in fulfilling my chair duties. One of the things I have to do is maintain the schedule for the department, and sometimes that can be really difficult to figure out which rooms a person fits in. So I'm actually using GIS and each of these times as polygons, so I can look at a particular professor. Let's look at Mark DeSocio, and this is what his schedule looks like. I can look at another professor, so Sarah Jones. This is her schedule, and we'll look at one more. So go to Silophone. So I can see where all of her schedule fits in. I can also look at different rooms. So let's look at room 148. So room 148 is a very full room. So when I try to think about who can fit into a room, before we enter everything into the university system, we can start to experiment with that. Let's look at 160, which is our lab room. So again, I can see where some dates are available. All the data I have is in a spreadsheet-like looking database. And I also try to look for some problems. So for example, let's look at Silophone's Geography 150 that ends at 1040, which is fine because Nwamba starts at 11. Let's change hers to make that 1115. And I'll just put that in as, I can just make it 1140. That works out as well. So as we can see now, Silophone's schedule is going to overlap with Nwamba's. But what I'm going to try to do here is go to check the error type. So let's see if there's a class conflict. And sure enough, that now pops up that I have Geography 150 and Geography 103 are overlapping. So that's a correction that I have to make. Let me show you another conflict. I also realize sometimes a professor might be scheduled at the same time. So they're in different rooms. So there's truly not a conflict in the class, but there is a conflict with the schedule. Now, in this case, when I run it, there is no professor conflict. And another one I've decided to create was one of a core course conflict. So oftentimes we want our students to take, say, Geography 101, or excuse me, Geography 201, 204, and 219 in the same semester, have a combination. Currently, we've had a lot of conflict with that. So I run that, and sure enough, Geography 201 and Geography 204 are overlapping with one another. Now, one of the things we know is Geography 201 has a second lab, so we can fit the students in. So this again allowed me to create an environment where we had the schedule would pick up on where we had these conflicts. So I'm going to go back in and let's change the Silophone time to 1040. I'll change it back again. And here you can see that's now been corrected. So when we come back to our class conflict, it no longer exists. Now, one of the other things that I just ran into, we no longer have an administrative assistant at the moment, so I have to generate a lot of other paperwork. And one thing that our administrative assistant does is generate a master calendar that has our office hours and where everyone is. So I'm going to actually click on a button here that I created that allows me to create something called faculty schedule. And what I'm going to do here is Control Alt, all copy, and then inside of Word, I'm going to paste this and then layout. Let's make it landscape. I'll select all again and say insert tables, convert text to table. So now I have a table and I've got these \ns. So I'm just going to do a general replace. So every time I see a \n, I'm going to replace that with a carriage return, place all, say yes. And I'll come down and make this size 8. So now what I have is for every faculty member, this row is unnecessary, so I'm going to delete that. There we go. So now for every professor, for each day of the week, I know when they're teaching, and then I just go in here and I'll just type office hours 9 to 11, or whatever the faculty member gives me. So having all of this straightened out or coming together so quickly makes life really easy for me to then hand this out to all the faculty so we have a list of where everybody is at any given time. All right, so how did this work? Well, I started looking at times and I saw, oh, 9:30 to 10:15. That looks a lot like 9 degrees, 30 minutes and 0 seconds to 10 degrees, 15 minutes. So I created a point for the start and the end times. Now, of course, this is just one straight line. So what I could do is move this point to 9 degrees, 30 minutes, 0 seconds, and a latitude of 1 degree. Excuse me, I mean a longitude of 1 degree. And I'm here doing the YX version. And then what I could do next, of course, is create a line. So the line now is a diagonal line, and then from there, of course, I can create a rectangle. So everything you see here are simply rectangles with degrees, minutes, and seconds. So I'll give you an example of what this would look like. This is all the data thrown into the database. So every single professor now has a geometry that represents the start and end times of all their classes. So this is for Dr. Chen, her Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, and her start and end times. I can click on this next one here. This is Dr. Nwamba and his time. So everything is thrown into this big, gigantic mess. And as you can see, also we have a room number. So what I'm able to do in a spatial database is select all the classes that have 160 as their room number. And I basically create a map where I have annotation on top of each map that represents the class number, the professor name, and time and room. So now where is this map? Well, I've created what I call a silly map. This is the map. So this is the map that we're looking at, room 160. Let's start this up again. And let's have a look at Dr. DeSocio's schedule. Sure enough, Dr. DeSocio is off the coast of Africa because, again, we're using degrees, minutes, and seconds. Another thing that I'm doing here, we zoom in really close, you can see that in this case, the polygon doesn't quite go 1 complete hour because I don't want them touching one another. So when I perform my intersection routine, I'm able to then keep classes that are from 2 different days from intersecting with one another. And again, let's go back out to the whole thing. Notice we have the contact hours as well. So in the database, every instructor, we know what the contact hours are for their task. So what we do is just add those up. So every time I generate sheets for each professor, I am able to total up the contact hours that each of them have. And most of these people are on just a slight overload, so it allows me to notice that. Here's someone who's on a regular load of 12 contact hours. And I've also created some buttons that let me print out, say, Sarah Jones's schedule, or I can print everybody's out. So there's a lot more things that I'm doing to handle other administrative duties like assigning majors and or assigning advisees and minors. So I'm just, again, using a database to do that. If you're interested in more, just drop me a line and I'll produce another video showing you some of the other tasks that I'm doing.